Don't stop.
Hi, thanks so much for joining me. I'm Zach Randles-Friedman. Thanks for joining me because I have a fantastic guest for you today that I'll tell you about just in a few moments. But before I get into that, as you may or may not know, if you listen to the show, you knew that I grew up in the Miami area, lived in South Beach during college, and then whenever I was in college, there was this, at the beginning of June every year, I think it was used at the first weekend of June, so Pride Month time, there was a thing at Disney World called Gay Days. And so Gay Days was basically unofficial because Disney wasn't necessarily saying come to Gay Days. And it was unofficial. And you would have all gay people from all around the world, but mostly kind of probably in Florida and places like that, would come to Disney World. And it was like they had, what's the name? Blizzard Beach, which is a water theme park as part of Disney. So like they had to have, like everybody knew like that Saturday was like Blizzard Beach. And then they knew that Saturday night was, I don't know, some club was whatever it was. Like there was events planned throughout that entire weekend. But then there was Disney and Epcot days. And then I don't know, can't remember about MGM Studios or Disney Studios. And then Animal Kingdom was not around then. But you would go and it was so fun. And the thing is that you were supposed to wear red for people to be able to pick you out being gay. Because it wasn't just open for LGBTQ plus people. It was open for anybody. And it just happened to be like an unspoken weekend where tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of gay LGBTQ plus people would go to Disney World. And it was always really fun. And it was just, a 4-hour drive or 3.5-hour drive or whatever it was for us from Miami to Orlando. So it was really easy. So I have two different stories about this. First is that, I have three stories. First is that we and my friend were walking in through the Magic Kingdom, and we're walking down that main street where all the stores are in Disney World, and I go to my friend, oh my God, I don't have any red on. No one's going to know I'm gay. And this two guys next to us looked at us and just started laughing. And I'm just like, what? What are you laughing at? And I knew what they were laughing at because it's like, I'm obviously gay, but it was just funny that they did that. And my friend Tony still brings that up to me. Like every time Gay Days is coming up, he just brought it up to me this past week and said, hey, don't you remember that time you said that funny joke? I'm like, it wasn't a joke, but so that's my first story. The second story I have about Disney Gay Days is it's so funny to see when families don't realize that they're at Gay Days and the dads, like you're in line standing for, I know, Pirates of the Caribbean or something, right? And there's like a family in front of you, like a dad, a mom, 2 or 3 kids. And if the dad's like a DILF, like he's kind of hot, like he's getting checked out the whole time. And I remember this one dad was like, there seems to be like a lot, I mean, it's LGBTQ plus days, but I felt like it was more gay men that went to these events. But it's like, it seems like there's a lot of guys here this time. And I told the dad, I said, it's like Gay Days at Disney this weekend. He goes, oh, it is? It was just hysterical because I thought everybody was like at a conference wearing, matching shirts and stuff. Because a lot of gays would do that also. Like their whole group would wear the same shirt or they'd have shirts made and stuff, Gays got to be gays with all their little like silly campiness and stuff. So that was always funny. And then my last funny story about Gay Days is that we would always go with a big group of people. So it would be me and my friend Tony and my friend Eddie and Rob. And then my friend Tony was dating a guy named Doug for a while. And so Doug would come. And my friend Craig would go as well. And there was one more person. I can't think of who it was from back then. But then one year I was dating this guy and I said I was going to bring him. And nobody really met him before because the guy was like a closet case or something. And I was in college and I thought him being in the closet was so hot and stuff. I can't, and the funny thing is I cannot even remember his name because we called him Buddy, because he would always say to my friends, instead of calling like, hey, Tony, he'd be like, hey, Buddy. And he called everybody Buddy. So we ended up calling him Buddy, like after him and I ended it. And we ended it on this trip. So we came up, he drove up with me. He like was acting strange once we got there. Like we rented a big, like it was before there was Airbnb, but we rented like some vacation home or something so we could all stay together. And he was acting really fucking weird. And I'm just like, why is this guy acting strange? Like I'm going to be with him for 4 days and he's going to act weird. And you really don't know somebody you're dating until you go away with them. And I got to know this guy very well, very quickly. And then like after the first day, I just said, I'm like, you're a fucking weirdo. And like, stop. He was like arguing with one of my friends or something. I don't even remember what happened. And then he's like, oh, well, are we going to go to Disney World today? I'm like, yeah, we can go. And I'm like, of course we're going to go. But then he's like, I don't have any money. I'm like, I'm in fucking college. Like, well, you think I'm going to pay for you? He goes, well, I'm in college too. I'm like, all right, well, I'm not fucking paying for you. I'm a broke college kid. And no, I'm not paying for you. So he fucking stayed home. So he stayed home. And when we were all like out for that day, I'm like, is this guy going to like go through all of our shit and steal our shit and like leave or something? So I don't know, we were making up all these things. That night, the big party was actually MGM Studio or Hollywood Studios or whatever it is, the theme park with Tower of Terror. That's what people did on that Saturday. That was like the big event that happened at night where they opened up the park just for that one night and people were out to, you could stay into the park until like 2 or 3 in the morning or something. And so we went there and he was saying that, he's like, yeah, I'm going to go to that. I'm like, okay. So he ended up coming with us. But when we got home, the strange thing is like, there were all these like tissues dropped all over the house and they had like little bits of blood on them. Like he had a nosebleed or something. We still don't know what the fuck that was. And he pissed me off so bad. I remember like cussing the guy out. And we were walking into Hollywood Studios or whatever the place is, the theme park at Disney for the night event. And he goes to me, he goes, oh, don't you want to hold my hand? I'm like, no. I go, I don't even want to look at you and I don't want you looking at me. He goes, oh, but we're together. I'm like, we're not together anymore. Like, you're a fucking freak. And no, we're not together. And then he pissed me off that night because he kept trying to like, I don't know, kiss me or something in the park or something, like trying to get with me. And I'm like, no, I told you I'm not into you anymore. And I was being a little, bitchy queen. And the next morning I tell my friend Tony, I said, he's not coming. I'm not driving him back to Miami. He goes, well, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm not driving him back. So he's all yours if you want, or he can take a bus back or a fly back or whatever. But I said, he's not coming in my car. And me and my friend Eddie and Rob got in my car and we drove off that morning. And so Buddy was stuck with my friend Tony, Doug, and Craig in their car. And I still hear about it to this day, about how weird and awkward that 3.5, 4 hour trip was. Because they had to drive home with Buddy, who they didn't even know. And I don't think they even really knew his real name because they called him Buddy. God, I wish I could remember his name. I wish I knew what his real first and last name was, because I would love to see what he's doing now. I don't know. He's probably he's probably in prison. I don't know. Who freaking knows? I did date a guy that went to prison, though, at one point. His name was Alex. I'll tell that story in one of my other intros to my podcast. But yeah, I dated a guy. He was so hot back then. And then we broke up for a number of reasons. Anyway, I'll tell that story another time. I'll save that one. But Alex... Oh, no, that wasn't his name. His name was Andy. Andy, because I almost said his last name. I don't want to out him on this show. So Andy was his name. Alex was another guy I dated. I was a whore. Anyway, today my guest is, maybe I need to talk to this guest because she is helping people that are in marginalized communities, and not just LGBTQ queer people, but she is helping people that are immigrants and just to have, any type of those issues, she's helping them, and she's amazing. And herself is a queer woman as well. And I just appreciated the conversation. I appreciate what she does. She helps people. And I wanted her to reflect on that, to realize how amazing it is that she's helping these marginalized communities because she lives in Texas. I mean, imagine living in Texas, being an immigrant or being part of the LGBTQ plus community. Texas is not forgiving for anything. So she's luckily in Austin, which is a much more liberal part of the state. But yeah, she's amazing. So enjoy my interview with Dr. Han Ren. I really enjoyed her, and she's fantastic. And I'll be back tomorrow with another interview. Actually, I'm bringing you the gay bit tomorrow because tomorrow's Friday. So enjoy. Thanks. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me on the Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay podcast. Today, I have a new guest that you have not met before. Her name is Dr. Han. Nice to meet you, and thanks for being on the show.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
So Dr. Han is based in Austin, Texas, and she has a new book coming out, which we'll talk about. It's coming out June 16th, and the name of the book is The Hyphenated Life, and we're going to get into all that. But first, tell me when you use the term hyphenated to describe people who hold kind of different marginalized identities, what does that mean to you personally?
Yeah, so I think we all have that feeling of having a foot in each world, not really belonging to any of them. Mm-hmm. And then some of us cope with this by just trying to assimilate to one of our identities over the other, or at the expense of different identities. And I think about hyphenates as people who really aren't willing to squeeze themselves or contort themselves into one box and really want to learn how to navigate and bridge these liminal in-between spaces a bit better, especially those of us who have more than 2 or 3 marginalized identities. There's a lot that we're always kind of navigating and trying to figure out when it comes to how we want to show up in the world.
When you were kind of growing up, did you grow up in Texas?
I didn't. I grew up in Michigan.
So when you were growing up in Michigan, what was it being marginalized? Were you, is your sexuality, are you a queer woman?
I'm a queer woman. Mm-hmm.
And so...
late blooming. So I did not grow up with that as even a remote possibility.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did you say before that?
Late blooming.
Late blooming. Okay, got it. So that was not even part of your life at that point whenever you were growing up. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so, as you were growing up and your Asian descent, how was that being in Michigan and being in that marginalized group? Was that easy in Michigan, or was there any challenges?
Yeah. So I was a 1.5 generation immigrant, which means I was born in China and then I immigrated to the US when I was 5. So okay. I was trying to learn the language and figure out, how to navigate American culture with 2 parents who had immigrated shortly before me. So they were very traditionally Chinese still. Yeah. So just that, in between cultures. And then in a college town, which was pretty progressive, but still predominantly white, and so was the school. So there was a lot of fitting in that I was trying to navigate.
Yeah, I just interviewed somebody a few weeks ago, and he had a similar story, but he was from Cambodia and came to Massachusetts and was in an all basically white school. And he's a gay man. He was feminine gay man from what he says. And he basically said that kids were making fun of him the first day of kindergarten, when he was getting on the bus. I think he came over when he was 4, but people were, he was Cambodian. He's like, the other kids were calling him Chinese and calling him a girl and stuff. And so day one of kind of going to his first day of school, he was kind of bullied by these kids. Can be so mean. I think that's just what I think.
Yeah. I mean, kids they do what they model, or they do what they are modeled for them. So unless they are, explicitly taught otherwise, it's especially late 80s, early 90s, there was a lot of assimilation that was put on.
So tell me what type of psychology that you what's your specialty in psychology?
I practice liberation psychology, anti-oppressive care. I see primarily children of immigrants, queer people, Asian Americans. And when it comes to presenting issues, my specialty is overthinking overachievers. So
Mm.
there's a big overlap between people who have marginalized identities and then really find their way through the world by performing.
And kind of what was the moment whenever you're like, the traditional psychology route isn't what you want to do, like where you just have patients come in and they see and maybe they're talking about their husband or who cheated on them or whatever. Like, when did you realize that you wanted to do something more specialized like this? Because I think it's great that people can come to you because those are two areas that you talked about, immigrant children, queer life. I mean, those are things that are traumatic to grow up with in this country and depending on where you live. So
yeah, I started my private practice when I got fully licensed, which was spring of 2017. So it
okay.
was right after Trump 1.0, the inauguration. And, people really found me because all of this racism just came through out of the woodworks. It was always there, but it just became so much more normalized and
Well,
blatant.
people felt like it was okay, like they had permission.
And so it became really apparent to me that people of the global majority deserve better care, and they deserve clinicians who specialize in the special struggles that we're navigating.
And do you, now that he is in his second term, which is hard to believe, and I try to stay away from talking about this, but it's really hard to. But do you see the mental health of people getting much worse because of this? And I'm just going to tell you that I do another podcast, which is an LGBTQ plus news podcast. And I do it 7 days a week, and I just kind of bring 10 minutes or less of LGBTQ plus news. And in that news, probably 50% of the stories are negative because it's anti-trans this, anti-LGBTQ this. And I just it's sometimes mentally, my mental health, I have to okay, I took a break last summer from doing it for about a month and a half because it was becoming too much. And so I couldn't imagine. I mean, I am in a marginalized community, but I couldn't imagine. I live in Massachusetts and Boston, so I'm in a very liberal state and community, and nobody cares that I'm gay or anything. So I'm lucky in that way. But I couldn't imagine living in a place in this country today where you're in a marginalized community and you're not accepted because the whole community is been given permission to not accept you.
Yeah. I've been seeing a lot more numbing out and dissociation where people kind of cope by just a bit of nihilism, and we have really felt that way about privacy and our data being, extracted. And we feel that way about surveillance, and we feel that way about so many domains of our existence these days. And it's necessary in order to stay sane, right? You have to give yourself that mental break. But where people really run into issues is if they don't tap back in, and then it leaks out the sides.
Are you seeing more issues with the immigrant population or the queer population?
Both. Yeah. I mean, I think it really depends on how you present to the world, right? We all have kind of these abilities to toggle different facets of ourselves and find survival by presenting in certain ways. And some people have just more privilege in that way that they can pass.
Yeah. And we'll be right back. Okay, now back to the show. When you think about queer people kind of at times overachieving and things like that, why do you think there is that perfectionism that a queer person is looking to do? Why do you think they have that? Or not all of them, being very stereotypical, but a lot of queer people do. What do you think that is?
Yeah, there's a overcompensation, right? I have to prove my value, my worth. If I am not going to be accepted because of this facet of who I am. Let me show you in all of these other ways that I am valuable and lovable and worthy. And I mean, that's true for immigrants, people of color, people of different relationship orientations, people with disabilities and neurodivergences, like whatever kind of marginalized identities that you
Yeah.
inhabit, there are some pretty standard, again, like generalization, but there's some the pretty stereotypical ways that people compensate. And some of them is perfectionism, people pleasing, overwork, just really trying to find a usefulness through their compensation.
And whenever you think about like that's a great point. Whenever you're saying the overworking, because you think about, are they being ambitious, or are they just adding a lot of anxiety to themselves? Which one is it, or is it a combination of both? Maybe so, because have some gay friends that I think they try extra hard
Mm-hmm.
to do really well at work, because they are part of the LGBTQ plus community, and they feel like they have to prove something in a way. So,
Yes. I mean, I
and
think it's all of the above. It's both, and some of us have more innate talents in these ways where
yeah,
you try harder and it actually leads to that achievement and success, which then reinforces that overwork is worthwhile. Other people may not, and then that just kind of leads to spinning wheels. But no matter what your skill set is, at a certain point, if all you're doing is performing for the gaze of dominant culture and society, then
yeah,
will come to the point where you will burn yourself out.
yeah. And like they always say that the suicide rate for LGBTQ plus children is higher than than a normal heterosexual child. Is
Yeah.
it the same for immigrant children as well living in this country? It is. Yeah.
Like immigrants, just people of the global majority. Black suicide rates have gone up. Asian suicide rates have been high. I mean, it's just any type of marginalized identity is going to put you more at risk because these days, especially, we don't have a lot of margin of error.
I mean, did you kind of see it with Trump 1.0? Did you see it slowly starting to shift, or do you think it happened pretty quickly?
I think once the first year of the presidency went by, when the initial shock of it dissipated,
Yeah.
people really re-anchored their values. But still, 1.0, it was kind of shameful to be fully embracing it, depending on where you are in society, right? Like if you are living in a urban city that's historically progressive in politics, like you kept that to yourself. But this time
Yeah.
around, because so much of politics is related to capitalism and the hyper capitalists, like the capitalists who very much want to embrace and chase where they're going to have their individual wealth increase, like it has become more acceptable to be more open about supporting this.
So I have two questions. One is, do you see people that did vote for him, even one or both times, that have um, I think that sometimes whenever I see an African American or an LGBTQ person that has voted for him, I don't understand it at all. I don't understand the rationale, how they came to that decision to vote for him.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple of guys that are on TikTok that come up in my TikTok feed, and they are on doing a live TikTok. Anytime, if I go in there right now, they're probably on there, and they are gay, stereotypical gay, and they are such Trump supporters. And I just don't get it. I can't wrap my around. And I've tried to go on and talk to them. I even invited one of them to come on my podcast to talk about it. And they said they wouldn't, they didn't show up. But I just don't get it. And
I think there's a
so,
lot of mental gymnastics that people do to try to find proximity to power. It's this I will do whatever I can to get a seat at the table, even if I'm going to be served crumbs.
and do you see people though that are now switching though and saying, I made a mistake?
Yeah, there are people who switch, I think especially those who maybe have voted based on like single issue ticket, right? Religion, abortion, these elements may have swayed people, especially with Epstein files and Trump's involvement in that. Like, their morality has made them realize that they have made a mistake. But there's also a lot of people who double down and kind of really buy into this narrative just because it's hard to face yourself and have the humility to be like, hey, maybe I was wrong.
Yeah. What are some of the mental health struggles that you're seeing today that people have?
I think it's really hard to try to like focus on the individual things that make your life worth living when you have so many things that are systemically influenced that make your life harder. And, like inflation, right? Like everyone is struggling with finances no matter how much money you have, unless you're like, billionaire class. That makes it harder to, find just your own peace, even if you are like doing okay, that everyone else is struggling too. Like if you have empathy and compassion for other people, it's really hard to ignore just how much systemically things are hard for people.
And do you have trans and non-binary clients?
I do, yeah.
And how are they feeling today? Because especially where you live, and I mean Austin, luckily is
out
like,
of Texas.
They are okay. Yeah,
Texas.
I mean Austin's very liberal. I love Austin actually. It's because it is so liberal and open and fun. But they're just like they know they got to get out.
A lot of them, if they can, a lot of them are either moving or have made plans to move, or kind of shifting how visible they are. The visibility element.
Oh my God, that's so sad though that you have to hide again.
So sad. Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. I didn't. I guess I never really thought about they have to hide again. I thought, I guess I always see trans and non-binary people as like they're fighting and they're protesting and stuff. But
and plenty still are, but it's just it's hard when it can get so exhausting. I mean, especially in Texas, like we have a ban on drag. Like there's a lot of things that like, people still do it, but every time you put yourself out there, it's a risk. And especially if you hold other marginalized identities, if you're an immigrant, if you're a person of color, if you, have children, right? Like if you have other things that make you more vulnerable to the visibility, then people have to make decisions accordingly.
And have you ever thought about leaving Texas because of all this craziness?
I mean, I've thought about it for sure. But it's also, I've got kids, I've got community. Like kids are in high school. It's really hard.
Oh yeah, you can't leave at all until they're graduated. They would not.
So that's sort of where we're thinking right now. Like, okay, let's send them off, and then we'll look at our options. But it's also just like, the day-to-day quality of life is still good in our little bubble. But, I know that not everyone, even within my immediate community, has that privilege.
And whenever you're talking with like colleagues that are in your field, do you ever get pushback from them on what you're trying to do? And I feel like psychologists and psychiatrists are more open-minded and liberal though. But do you ever kind of get pushback about you're being too visible about what you're doing because of what you're saying online, or you're writing a book about it? Tell me about that.
My immediate community is pretty like-minded, but when you are on any of these like therapist Facebook groups, for example, and then people are like, I'm going to start a conservative therapist group, and I'm like, y'all are marginalized. Like, what? Why are you gonna be like anonymous and hide this, right? Like, power aligns with you, and so it's frustrating because I think everyone wants to be, they don't want to be. Everyone thinks that they're persecuted in some way, that without taking kind of a structural power analysis to like where structural power aligns. And that's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because like Tennessee is doing, instead of Pride Month, the governor has made, it's called Nuclear Family Month for June. But a nuclear family is So this is what a definition is: a man and a woman and children. That's what a nuclear family is. So if you are a single mother, or you're a single father, or you're a family of two same-sex parents, you're not a nuclear family.
Right.
So it has to be a man and a woman and the children.
Yep.
So it's crazy that they won't even give 1 month
Yeah.
to the LGBTQ plus community,
Yeah.
and they got to
I
come
mean,
up with this craziness.
all of it, right? Like, it's Asian, Pacific, Native Hawaiian Islander month, and that's not recognized on any federal level anymore. Women's
Yeah.
month, like all of these pride months are not being recognized. Where identity is really being collapsed and reduced.
And we'll be right back. Okay, and now back to the show. What is your thoughts? Because, I worked in the corporate world for a long time, ran social media accounts.
Mm-hmm.
We would always put something out during Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, Black History Month. We would put stuff out, Pride Month. For every awareness month or week or day, we would always do something. And now I see all these companies are like really scaled back. You don't hear about DEI from a lot of companies anymore. It's really hidden in a way, I would say, almost, if it's even happening at all. I'm not going to call any companies that I worked for or anything, but one of the companies that I worked for recently, they do nothing now with any of this. And it's shocking to me because they feel like a liberal company and they don't care if you're gay, straight, black, white, Asian. They don't care about any of that, but yet they don't want the public, their public face to show that they are supporting DEI for some reason, which is so crazy to me.
Because we're still out here, right? We're still all in the mix and we're still part of society. Like, it's not like, people with marginalized identities just disappeared. It's kind of like this, it's a pendulum. It's the other side of like, oh, we're all the same. We don't see color. We don't see differences. And, there was a lot of issues with how DEI was operating because it was so performative, right? Like, you can't just like put culture and diversity in and not take white supremacy out. You're just, that's going to tokenize people and burn them out and make a toxic, hostile working environment as they are expected to champion diversity. So like, it wasn't exactly working before, but like, this isn't working either.
Yeah, and it's also like, it's crazy that because Pride Month, we're a month away, and a lot of these corporations have pulled out of supporting some of these Pride celebrations. And now a lot of these, even New York City, which is a huge Pride, they're having budget issues. And some of the smaller Pride celebrations are actually not able to do any Pride celebration because they've lost all their corporate funding or a majority of it. So it's like the whole thing is just kind of dissipating in a way, which is so sad.
It's so sad. It's really making thinking homogenized and eliminating critical thought because you are eliminating diverse voices and, different lived experiences. And a lot of my work was doing public speaking. So I did a lot of corporate ERG talks, a lot of keynotes, a lot of conferences. And now that there's no DEI funding, I'm not, doing any of these panels or opportunities anymore because they're just not platforming diverse ideas.
Do you think whenever we have a new government in place, some of this will slowly start to come back? Or do you think this is the new norm?
I really do think everything's cyclical, like if you look at history, if you look at just, we've been here before, we'll be here again. I think climate impacts is probably new. AI is new in ways that we haven't really encountered before. But when it comes to the pendulum or the cycles becoming more like fascist authoritarian versus more progressive and liberal, like that's just something we have navigated throughout history and time. So I do think it will come back. It's just going to look different as it does. History is a spiral.
Yeah. I just seen a video on Instagram this morning where they are showing it's an AI video where they're showing Trump has lost and people are going and taking his name off of all these buildings and stuff. So it's just like, it was kind of hysterical. So as you're talking with all these different people though as you're giving them therapy and helping them with their own mental health. How do you kind of like manage your own mental health? Because you're hearing, you're part of the marginalized community, plus you're hearing all these issues that people are having. How does that impact you and how do you kind of deal with it?
Yeah, it is. It's a rough time to be a therapist. I do think that self care is not optional. It's paramount. It's essential. Being able to take these breaks, being able to have your own community that you can plug into, that you can find support around, on whether that's in person or digital, having a solid mindfulness practice, whatever that may look like, moving your body, all the cornerstones of wellness that
Yeah.
are required to maintain your own mental health and physical health.
And you have a pretty good TikTok presence, right?
Yeah.
And why did you, well, I guess when you did decide to do that, and tell me why, and then when you did do it, were you kind of surprised on how it grew?
Yeah. I mean, it started as a pandemic boredom buster. I started
Really?
fall of 2020 when mental health was very much in the cultural zeitgeist, but it was very generic. It was, Eurocentric, traditional, like people talking about therapy that was very much catered to white people. And so
Yeah.
I wanted to have a space where I talked about therapy specifically for people of the global majority and destigmatizing it for my own communities. And it took off in its own way as TikToks tend to do. And it has very much shaped my career in ways I could never have imagined. It's been great because it's been liberating to find different sources of income and visibility. But it's also been exhausting because the internet's not the same place now as it was a few years ago. And social media and content creation is also a very different ball game now. And there's often times I'm like, I just want to get off this hamster wheel. But then, I realize my people are still out there. These issues are still important and they're still deserving of representation in space. So, I just make sure I take the breaks that I need from content creation as well.
Are parents of queer children, are they becoming more accepting of their children than before? Because, like whenever I was in high school, children would never come out of the closet or say they're bi, or there was definitely no transgender people in my high school. That was something that was just not heard of then.
Yeah.
I'm dating myself probably. But now, you hear kids are coming out in, junior high and selecting different pronouns and stuff in junior high and stuff. But how are the parents now? Is this generation of parents more accepting of that than I guess whenever I grew up?
Yeah, I think overall, the overarching it's just like, let's love your children, right? Love your children no
Yeah.
matter what. But it also depends on where you are geographically, what the cultural norms are of your community. I think just as much as there are people who are much more progressive, there's also people who are doubling down and much more secretive. And the splintered and the polarization of society is really apparent.
I have to sometimes remind myself that I'm in a bubble living where I live, and you probably have to do the same because you're in a little bubble as well. So, and I have to like realize that it's not like this everywhere. So, unfortunately,
even in our bubbles, right? Different communities just have very different experiences because of the privileges that are not afforded, because of how we appear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about your book. It's called the Hyphenated Life. Why did you decide to write that, and tell my audience a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's called The Hyphenated Life, Bridging the In-Between Spaces of Intersectional Identities. Working with my clientele and also my own experiences, there's just not a place for people who have one foot in different worlds. And it's like there's a normalization of being a social satellite. You get some of your needs met here and some of your needs met there. And then you may try really hard to fit in, but like, what does an experience of belonging actually feel like? There's always this too much, not enough paradigm that we're trying to toggle. And I really wanted to showcase the experiences of people who live this for their whole lives. And how do you actually find belonging in some spaces with your people that you can, define, right? Your chosen family. And then also, how do you navigate the expectations that are put on you in these other spaces? Because you have to. It's part of surviving. We can't just be like, I'm going to be so authentic no matter what, because that's not safe for all of us. So, recognizing that and not shaming that and not thinking that, not putting like a moral judgment on that. It's all just part of what we need to do in order to survive and find our place. And then better understanding, like, what are the common reactions? How do we get by when we're trying to thread that tiny needle?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's amazing what you're doing just because you're helping so many different communities that need it more than ever. So, you should definitely be very proud of yourself for doing that. So, your book will be out June 16th. It is on pre-sale right now. I'm looking at a link right now on your website, which is drhanren.com. And I'm also looking at an Amazon link so they can get it in both places. So
Amazon, Bookshop, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on your book. I can't wait to get it when it comes out on the 16th. And I appreciate you for being on. And if this episode resonated with you, make sure you share it and, send this book to somebody as a gift. It'll be a nice summer read, I think. So thanks so much for being on.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I lost my mouse and I'm trying to stop it. So.